are just over 24 hours away from the 2024 NFL Draft. Time is running out, so we had to get Maddy Glab on for the final mock draft watch.
Final countdown.
Exactly. All the tabulations have been made. Nice reference to Europe there, by the way. All the tabulations have been made. All the mock drafts have been tracked. And if there are any more after this, too bad.
Sorry
Maddy
about
is
ya.
done. It's no more.
We just had a guy call in, and he was talking about, getting one of these guys, and he made the statement that caught my eye. He said, let's just, one of these teams up there is going to draft one of these guys just to have a guy. And it brought to mind that all these teams, just like the Bills like to get, which I don't know if we're all on board with them being there this year because we're talking wide receiver, they want to take the best player, no matter what position. They want their roster to be so filled out already that they can take the best player. Well, okay, but not all of them are.
Nope. And when you look at position groups, not all of them are either, because you want to be drafting a player in the first round who makes sense financially for your team. Think about the Bills
Money
and their
players.
salary cap. Think about what they could save if they draft a wide receiver with that 28th overall pick, or if they move up in the draft to draft a wide receiver.
Yeah, you're talking about money positions. Quarterbacks, of course, and they're at the top of this draft. Offensive tackles, the draft is really top-heavy and a lot of really quality offensive linemen. Wide receivers, big draft for wide receivers, maybe the biggest we've ever seen. And the other one is edge rushers. Now, this one's not as thick in edge rushers as most drafts, but when you're talking, if you're going to get best player available, not only that, you want to do it economically as well. So you want to get these money players who are going to outperform their rookie contracts during their first 4 years in a draft where you're rich in those positions.
Guys, we saw what Amon-Ra St. Brown went for today and what the wide receiver market is going to be for players like Jamar Chase and Justin Jefferson.
Yeah.
Think about drafting a wide receiver and what that saves you for the first 4 to 5 years.
Yeah.
A lot of money.
Right.
And that number is just going to go up on wide receivers. Should we talk about the numbers?
Yeah, let's just lay it out. When all was said and done, I mean, I think we can guess what the most popular position was. But you went top 3, so let's hear how that shook out with all the mocks.
Tracked 147 total mock drafts starting at the end of January. I am so happy to be done, although I loved my time doing it. Wide receiver is number 1. 115 times wide receiver was mocked to Buffalo. That's 78% of the mock drafts tracked. Number 2, defensive line. 17 times defensive line was mocked to Buffalo. That's 12%. And coming in third, defensive back. 10 times, so 7%.
Okay. And I saw that you also tracked how many times there were trade-ups for a wide receiver. And I gotta
Were
admit,
you surprised?
I thought the number was going to be higher.
Me too.
So what is the number of trade-ups?
12 times a mock draft had us trading up for a wide receiver. 14 total times we traded up. 2 of those 14 times were for a defensive lineman.
Oh, okay.
So there were 14 total trade-ups. 12 of those trade-ups were for a wide receiver.
Yeah.
2 of those were for a defensive lineman. One was Laiatu Latu, and I think another one was Byron Murphy.
And I guess as I think about it now, knowing the Diggs trade happened so late in the game, I think a lot of people had us taking a receiver, but then after the Diggs trade happened, people are like, they got to trade up to get a receiver now.
Right.
And that didn't really happen until March. So maybe that's why the number was so small.
We saw most of the trade-ups happening in April.
Yeah.
So we've had a shift in names as well, because as the knowledge comes out and we start to get opinions about where teams are thinking, and now you start getting pro days 40 times, and it's all the hay is in the barn, and you've got all the information you're going to get. Now, in the last week, I didn't know A.D. Mitchell was a diabetic, right? We didn't know Brian Thomas Jr. had a shoulder. All this stuff.
The last-minute details are coming out on these guys.
So now these guys have got, oh my gosh, they've got some warts. So now how does that change? Has it changed things very much?
What I've seen in the last 2 days, there have been, let's say, 8 to 10 mock drafts. A.D. Mitchell is still getting mocked to Buffalo. Brian Thomas Jr. is still getting mocked to Buffalo. A name that I've seen pop up a couple times, more frequently than in the past, Xavier Worthy going to the Bills at number 28.
Now, when those mocks come out, do you think Xavier Worthy's coming to Buffalo because Brian Thomas and A.D. Mitchell are gone?
Yes, I have
Okay.
seen mock drafts with Brian Thomas Jr. going in the 8 to 10 range and A.D. Mitchell going in the teens. Now, I've only seen 2 of those mock drafts that we have tracked, but Brian Thomas Jr. seems to be going in the teens range in quite a few mock drafts now.
Yeah.
So he could be off the board
Yeah.
by number 28. I'm starting to think that if Buffalo wants to go get Brian Thomas Jr., they're going to have to go trade up and get him. What is that perfect number? Is it after
Right.
15? Is it 18
Yeah.
that they'd be willing to move up to go
exactly
get them if they believe that is their guy?
Yeah, I think the cost is a little too rich for Brandon Beane's blood above 15 because you're talking the first half of the round and you got to part with a lot of capital to do that. That's why I'm convinced if somehow, some way, Brian Thomas gets past 15, which could happen. I mean, you could have a run on tackles. The quarterback market could be stupid in the top 10, like crazy stupid, like 5 quarterbacks in the first 12 picks or whatever. That helps the Bills. And so if you have that, you have a run on tackles, and Indianapolis needs cornerback help. Let's not forget that. And they could get the best corner in the draft at 15 potentially. He gets past 15. I think Brandon Beane's on the phone with the
Brownie's
Seahawks.
been saying that for a while now. If you get past 15, you start looking at teams. And, you know, if you know a team or you think a team like a Cincinnati is going to they're going to take an offensive lineman because they got all the wide receivers they could ever possibly want. So if you get to Cincinnati, they could, at 18, you may get the first or second or third offensive tackle off the board at 18. You can drop back and take the 5th or 6th offensive tackle and still be plugged in for a decade with that guy in this draft.
Daniel Jeremiah tweeted today, to summarize my last 5 phone calls, everyone is moving up for an offensive
I
tackle.
think it's going to be nuts.
This might be great for teams who want a wide receiver. You may see a couple guys fall, and in a few mock drafts, I've seen Odunze fall beyond 10 because of the tackles and the quarterbacks that are going off the board in the first 10 picks.
And there have been some mocks that have Brian Thomas to the Bills at 28.
Yes.
Which I don't know if that's going to happen, but the fact that people are thinking it's even possible is surprising enough. But I think it speaks to all the uncertainty of what could happen in the top 10, either because teams are getting quarterback antsy or teams are getting offensive tackle antsy between the ranges of like 10 and 15. I think that's really where the run on tackles is going to happen. We all believe Tennessee's taking one at 7, and then, okay, receiver here, pass rusher there, maybe a quarterback or two, 12 and 13. But then after that, people are just going to go cuckoo for Cocoa Puffs on offensive tackles after that. That could help the Bills.
The more we talk about it, you know, we've been talking about it since March. I think they are probably going to set a record for the most offensive players taken in the first round of the draft. The record's 19.
Okay.
And 20 is, it seems like, I don't think there's 10 defensive guys I can name in this draft.
Not for round one.
For at every position, there may be 10.
Yeah.
At every position, let alone the corners and all that, the money spots, the edge rushers and stuff. It'll be interesting to see how far down we have to go to get a defender taken.
Yeah.
If 8 offensive tackles, let's just say offensive linemen, that's going to happen, taken in the first round. When you factor in the interior offensive linemen that could go off the board.
Graham Barton, Jackson
Right,
Browns
right.
Johnson.
5 quarterbacks and 7 wide receivers, you get to 20.
20.
The overrun. I told him the
And
over-under
Bowers
was-
is in there, so you're at 21. Byron Murphy, the defensive tackle from Texas, is in there. Now you're at
Right.
22.
Yeah.
You know, I don't know why. It's just this gut feeling that
Leatu
people are just going to
Latu's
go
in there.
nutso for offensive tackles between like 10 and 16, 17.
And that's without, and I'll say it again, that's without a single running back being taken in the
Right.
first round, not even
Right.
projected to be taken.
Not happening this season.
Maddie, the one other thing that I know you tracked were how the names changed month by month, you know, from February to March to April in terms of who was the favorite receiver name as we went through the process. We didn't cover this already, did we?
No, we haven't talked
Okay.
about it yet.
So let's go month by month. Tell us the most popular name as we moved from February to March to this month, April here.
I like tracking this because it's fun to see trends, especially when you're a team looking for possibly multiple positions with your first pick, you can really see how trends take shape and form over the course of a few months. So in February, I tracked 32 mock drafts. Brian Thomas Jr. was the favorite, being mocked to Buffalo 13 times. At number 2, Keon Coleman, mocked to Buffalo 7 times. Number 3 was Troy Franklin, mocked to Buffalo 7 times. Troy Franklin kind of dropped off of a cliff after February. He no longer was one of the top wide receivers being mocked to the Bills. So in March, I tracked 42. Number 1, Adonai Mitchell being mocked to the Bills 14 times. Number 2, Brian Thomas Jr. 7 times. Adonai Mitchell stayed the favorite in April. 59 mock drafts tracked. Adonai Mitchell mocked to the Bills 22 times. Number 2 was Brian Thomas Jr. 13 times. Number 3, Xavier Worthy 7 times.
So the popularity of Mitchell in April is what helped him pass Brian Thomas for the overall most popular prospect.
Yeah.
Because he only beat him by three mock selections to the Bills, 39 through 36. So he doesn't have that big April. That doesn't happen.
22 to 13 in April.
Yeah.
It seemed like every other mock
April.
draft, Adonai Mitchell was heading to the Bills.
April's when the combine took place, and they got everybody.
Well, it's after the combine.
Yeah, everybody
Pro
got
days.
right.
Yeah.
Around
Everybody
pro
got a
days.
chance to see the guy and start talking to people
Brian
about.
Thomas
you
had a
know.
good workout too, but
Yes, they
Mitchell
did.
jumped out of the
And,
gym.
I think that's why Brian Thomas went down, is because he was gone in most of the drafts when they
Well,
finally got
yes,
to Buffalo.
yes,
So,
that's true too.
you know what I mean? So that's the thing. A.D. Mitchell, I think it intersected with Buffalo's need and the number at 28 and the ascension of Brian Thomas Jr. and other players up to that point. And A.D. got better, so
And
he
if
got
you-
into the first round.
In a few mock drafts, we also are moving up to go grab A.D. Mitchell. Do you guys
Right.
believe that could happen tomorrow night?
Yes.
I think, I don't think you'd have to move as far. So let's just say the Bills can't get up to where they want to get Brian Thomas. They can't get a deal done. Now it becomes an exercise in where do you have to go to get Mitchell. And I think it's hard to determine where that would be, but I think Philadelphia could be a candidate at 22. I don't think the Dolphins help you at 21. I don't think the Steelers help you at 20. And then you're down after that to, 23, 24. They've done trades with Dallas before, 24. But you could argue that Dallas may be looking for one of those tackles. And if the run has already happened and the value stinks, maybe you can get them to move out of there. If they want to get an offensive tackle a little bit later and slide back 4 spots. And then you have the Bucs at 26, I want to say. So there's a team. The problem is you could easily see the Bucs taking a receiver. They're going to need an heir apparent to Mike Evans, who's not going to do it forever and is entering his 11th season in the league. So, yeah, I think a smaller move to get AD, especially
I'm
if he's
thinking-
the next last guy that you got on your
And
board.
you want to go get him.
Minnesota is a great spot, except the fact that Minnesota's also got
They
the
might
11th
not have that
pick.
pick by the time we
Yeah,
get there.
they've got 11 and 23, and they need a quarterback.
You know who might have that pick by then? New England.
That's right, or Arizona.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's
Actually, if it's Arizona, you might be able to get him to move because they also have the 27th pick. So you might get Arizona to slide back to you. Now they have 27 and 28.
That's a good
And what
point.
they could do with that. So if you want one of those teams to trade down into that pick at 23 and it's not Minnesota, you'd rather have it be Arizona than
yeah,
New England.
unless Minnesota trades 23 and 11 to Arizona, and Arizona takes both those from them.
Yeah.
Now Arizona's got like 4 first-round picks.
Well, they have 27, and they would have 11 and 23.
Yeah,
Yep.
they have 3 first-round picks. Wow.
So they would be apt to slide back a little bit and get even more draft capital later, conceivably. What are you going to pay 3 first-rounders? That's tough, too. Don't forget
It's hard
that.
to do. Hard to do. But, that
This is why the draft is amazing.
I don't know. It's awesome. Yeah. So but I can't get. We started this thing, and I get back to it. You got to take the best player available, but there's so much in that, right? Certainly, there's the best taking the best all-around guard who's going to play for 10 years and be your guy, or a wide receiver who's going to play for 10 years and be your guy. The wide receiver is probably going to have more game-breaking plays during a career than a guard will, right? So there's money positions. There's wide receiver, quarterback,
Yeah.
edge rusher, and offensive tackle.
And there's a hole on the roster for wide receiver.
Now, the Bills,
makes
I
sense.
don't think any of us are in the spot where we've been in the last few years, where Bills could take anybody. I don't think they don't have that luxury this year. I think this is a draft where they've got a little bit of a positional emergency.
Let's say disaster strikes and the value at receiver has completely been blown to smithereens. Give us the defensive names most mocked to the Bills, Maddie. If it's not a receiver, who do most people target for the Bills on the defensive side of the ball?
Aside from wide receivers, the top 2 defensive players mocked to the Bills at number 28, defensive tackle Johnny Newton out of Illinois. He was mocked to the Bills 7 times. And defensive back Cooper DeJean out of Iowa was mocked to the Bills 5 times. I could see both of those names happening for Buffalo if the run on wide receivers has already happened.
I think, I don't have a problem with him taking an edge guy or a defensive tackle. I think that's more likely. I don't see him taking a safety in the first round. I just don't see that position being that big a priority. With any safety in the draft, let alone Cooper DeJean or anybody else. I just can't see that.
Well, to your point that you just made earlier about positional emergency and needing to fill a role, your first round pick is a guy you want on the field right away. Not that the Bills have always subscribed to that with first round picks in the past, but Dalton Kincaid got on the field right away, and I think if you land a receiver, you kind of want the same kind of path for him as Kincaid had last year. On the defensive side of the ball, that's harder to justify because Johnny Newton would be Ed Oliver's backup.
Exactly. He's
What's
a
he going to
3
get?
tech.
15, 20 snaps a game? And Cooper DeJean, whether you play him at corner or you play him at safety, is he unseating Rasul Douglas or Christian Benford or even Taylor Rapp at strong safety? I don't know that he is.
Right.
So it might be just as much an exercise of finding a guy that we can get on the field to help our roster, which I think has had its greatest veteran turnover in the Bean McDermott era.
Yes.
You got to get somebody that's going to play for you too. And if it's at those 2 positions, I agree with you. I don't know if he's getting on the field.
Yeah, so I'm right. Unless he turns out to be better than what he looks like, right? I mean,
well, yeah, that could happen.
but I'm totally with you. I think this is a wide receiver or bust year for the Bills. I wouldn't be surprised if they trade
You're
back.
getting people really excited.
If they trade back
If they don't have
And
any
get-
wide receivers they like, that makes sense.
and get 2 of them.
Yeah, pick up a 3.
Or take one at 38 and one at 60, and
And then whatever else you need in the 3rd round.
then in the back, you get that 3rd rounder for trading back and
Defense.
and you can start diversifying then. But get 2 guys with some traits and some qualities that you like at the top of the draft.
The Bills draft 2 receivers with their first 2 picks. People are going to be going gaga.
And Brownie's going to be doing.
They're going to have a
lap.
parade. For
Brownie's
Brandon
going to be
Beane.
carrying a Bills flag, running laps.
I will.
Around.
I already committed to that. If our first 2 picks are receivers, I will run a lap around this facility. And you can give me a flag. You can give me a silly hat. I don't care. I will do it.
We released an article on BuffaloBills.com this morning, top 7 storylines to follow ahead of the NFL draft. One of the things that I asked NFL Network's Cynthia Freeland and CBS Sports draft analyst Chris Trapasso was, could you see Buffalo going back-to-back wide receiver? If you do you like that? Or are you against that? Both of them said, I loved what Brandon Beane did when Greg Rousseau and Boogie Basham got drafted in the 1st round and the 2nd round, back-to-back defensive linemen going off the board to Buffalo. They said they would also love to see that for the Bills in this year's draft.
I would love to see
Because
it too.
you double your chances. Your chances.
And in that same draft, they went back-to-back at offensive tackle. They went
Exactly.
right after
Yeah.
that. They went Spencer Brown, Tommy Doyle.
Tommy Doyle, yeah.
So it's not something that would be unprecedented for the Bills
And
in
I'll say
round
this
1 and
too.
2.
Think about it. They got 3 really solid players out of those 4 guys. Tommy Doyle's still on the team, but he's been injured.
been injured.
But
2
Spencer Brown's
ACLs.
had a real his best year as a pro last year at right tackle, and Greg Rousseau, Boogie Basham have been like plug and play. They have taken, and Greg Rousseau has really emerged. I mean, that guy, you can't get him off the field in a team that rotates.
Yeah.
I mean, he's always out there, and he's been available too. That's been huge. So they got it right when they did it. I'd love to see him get it right at wide receiver the same way.
Guys, we've talked about wide receivers. We've talked about prospects. We've watched the tape. We've studied the numbers. Is there a wide receiver that you guys have fallen in love with that you would love to see on this team?
It's interesting you say that, Maddie. We're going to have to hold that because that
Are
is
we
our
holding
show
it
tomorrow.
for? Okay.
Who's your favorite?
Who's
Who
your
is
favorite?
your guy? That will be revealed tomorrow.
Tomorrow?
On tomorrow's show.
Okay.
So that's what we will do.
We're not giving up
at
any
that point in
info right
time.
now.
But-
Dun,
Great minds think alike. You're on the right track, Maddie, but we
You're
can't
all
give you
over it,
answers
Maddie.
today.
Yeah.
We will have to hold those and disclose
We're
them
going to have you
tomorrow.
write yours down on a piece of paper and seal it in an envelope. And
That's
we'll,
right.
We'll open
Yes.
it on the
Yeah.
show tomorrow. Don't tell us what it is.
Yeah.
But
Maddie, thanks for all
Of
the mock
course.
draft watch help all pre-draft
Awesome
season.
stuff.
We're glad you finally get a break on this.
So are
and
you? Let
your
me ask you
eyes won't
this.
glaze
Are
over
you-
from another mock
It
draft.
had to be kind of like ho hum because everybody was picking us to take a wide out. So was it more fun last year when they were? We were all,
little
more
more
all over the
varied.
map.
Last year, I looked back at last year to count the number of prospects, different names that got mocked to us. It was in the 40s because if you remember last year's draft class, people had a slew of different grades
Yeah.
of so many different guys that could be drafted in the first round versus this year it's not that it's
Yeah,
not
it's a little more
it's
cut
not
and
as
dry.
deep as it was last year in terms of the grades that people had on people. We had like 20 something different prospects be mocked to the Bills at number 28 or within the range of the 20s. So I enjoyed seeing all the wide receivers.
I think this draft is more like the draft 2 years ago when everybody under the sun said we needed a corner.
Kyer Elam was a
took Kyer
favorite name
Elam.
at the end.
And we made a little jump
Yeah.
up to get him. Could that happen again this year for a receiver?
I think that is the template that we're working with right
Yeah.
now. I think they're gonna trade up into the mid-20s and take a
Wherever
guy.
they can land.
The guy, yeah.
All right, Maddie, thanks as always.
Thanks, Maddie.
Maddie and I, by the way, will be
Woohoo!
doing a live stream on the Bills' social channels right after the Bills' first-round pick on Thursday night. So whether that pick is made at 8:30 p.m. or 11:30 p.m., Maddie and I will be kicking in a live stream immediately after the pick for reaction. We'll have Greg Cosell joining us as well for some analysis. And then obviously we'll go to Brandon Bean right after, presuming he gets down to the podium in short order for full wall-to-wall coverage after the pick is made. And then we'll do it again on Friday night after their second-round pick.
Nothing
So-
else going on. I'm taking a weekend off. You guys work hard.
So
See you
check
later,
out the
Tasker.
Bills YouTube
Out.
channel, all the other social channels. Maddie and I will be streaming live right after the Bills pick Thursday night.
Can't wait.
Yeah.